Looks like the Conservative Party has come around and decided not to just touch, but grab a hold of the third rail of politics in Canada. Yeah, that's right, immigration. Now, Darshan Maharaja yesterday on Twitter pointing this out. He's been a big advocate in this fight and probably one of the prime movers in this whole movement. As a rule, I don't post politicians' videos, but I will make an exception here, as I had criticized Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party for being behind the curve in issuing a statement on the immigration, temporary foreign worker mess. They took a while, but boy, am I surprised. And he posts the video here with a second tweet saying the choice of Arpan Khanna, who is a conservative politician, to present the CPC view of the mess is prudent. He has a degree of immunity against the racist accusation on account of being South Asian ethnicity himself. Now let's get into this. This is the video that was presented by the Conservative Party.
Record levels of population growth.
Trudeau's destroyed our entire immigration system.
Continue to pursue our policies of openness.
Okay, I think it's time we have an honest conversation on immigration. I don't want to make this a hyper-partisan issue, but it's important we hold those responsible accountable for their actions. I think it's time in Canada we have an honest discussion on our immigration system, where we look at our past, where we were, where we are today, and the path forward. I want to take this back to 2015 and our system back then.
All right, before we get into that, I do want to make the point on this. This is not a partisan issue. This is actually a bipartisan issue. And you can go to places like, well, let's point this out, r/Canada Housing 2 on Reddit, where it's about the housing market, but it's often about immigration because, well, immigration is often the issue behind all of this. Now, this is a lot of, citizen journalists, but also just people posting their point of view. Of course, this is the number 2 because the first one got taken down due to, Redditors saying that it's, terms of service, all of that stuff. But this one's been up for some time, and I just want to point this out. This is not a partisan issue. It is a bipartisan effort from people that are screaming at politicians, why don't you bring this stuff up? And especially for when it comes to the official opposition, it'd be nice to hear them. And now that they're saying something, it is quite refreshing.
Back then, we had a system that was responsible, that was lawful, that was the envy of the world. Canada was a land of opportunities where you came to this country, you worked hard, you played by the rules, you could achieve that Canadian dream. Fast forward to today. We are seeing an immigration system under Justin Trudeau that is full of corruption, fraud, abuse, and chaos.
Students are graduating from programs that are not particularly valuable in the labor market. Essentially, we're using the International Student Program as a source for cheap, exploitable, expendable, temporary labor.
If you look at the rate of growth in Canada, just last year, we had a growth rate of over 3%. That is the highest since the 1950s. Sean Fraser, the former immigration minister himself, now housing minister, has admitted to be losing 1 million people. If you wonder if this is sustainable, it's not. We are hearing stories.
I would like to just point out as well, on top of that, those 1 million people, they find themselves somewhere. Where have they found themselves? Well, largely in Toronto, and losing track of 1 million people, it's usually because they're now undocumented, either overstaying visas or coming in illegally in the first place. But here's Toronto's deputy mayor talking about, well, what were we going to do with these people?
Undocumented residents, like all Torontonians, deserve safe access to housing, decent work, education, and health services. And with Toronto's Access TO policy, undocumented residents can access municipal services in Toronto without fear of discrimination or their status being shared with other orders of government, putting them at risk for detention and deportation. And that needs to be shared at every single level of government.
What needs to be shared with every single level of government is the status of these people. Absolutely. When Canadians can't access any of these benefits, well, why should anyone who hasn't paid into the system access these? And this is where a lot of people are getting upset in this scenario.
Of newcomers lining up at our food banks in record numbers.
We were kind of overwhelmed by how many groups were showing up day after day.
We have heard numerous stories of international students, 25 of them, living in a one-bedroom basement.
So we are just one floor, and we are 9 people on that floor. In the basement, it's like 6 people in the basement. So it's like 15 people in just one house, which is crazy.
They're coming to Canada for that hope, and they don't see that hope. Don't take my word for this. Let me tell you what Justin Trudeau himself has said. This is his words. Whether it's the temporary foreign workers or whether it's international students in particular that have grown at a rate far beyond what Canada has been able to absorb. He wants to bring this back under control. And the implication of him saying that he has to bring it under control is that it's out of control right now. If you look at Justin Trudeau and his team for the last 9 years, they've had 5 separate immigration ministers, and then each of them are blaming their predecessors for their government's own failure. Canada's immigration problems go all the way back probably to when Trudeau first took office. But if you're looking for a specific time and date when this actually spiraled out of control, was probably in 2017. If you remember, Justin Trudeau put a tweet out saying everyone is welcome to our country after Donald Trump had just won the election down south. What did that do for Canada? One was the famous Roxham Road border crossing that put immense pressure on our immigration system. It increased backlogs, it increased the cost of processing, and took away resources from lawful immigration to our country. And the costs are being pushed on to our municipalities like Toronto, Montreal, who are asking the federal government for millions and millions of dollars to fund this problem.
Well, fund this problem, but not only that, not correct the problem. Now, he doesn't go much more into the Roxham Road issue. Now, Roxham Road, you might be asking, what is this? This is an aerial view of the place. You can see where the border line is here. And this is New York, and then this is Quebec. And Roxham Road comes up and it just stops here. Now, what happened here was this became a place, word of mouth went out, where people could illegally enter Canada. And illegally is the term. Now, what the federal government came out to say is, well, this is an irregular border crossing. And so what they did was they commissioned a RCMP stand to be erected there to welcome those people in, file a police report, and then have them make a promise to appear in court at a later date, which you could just guess if many of them are even showing up to these court dates. But I mean, I'll leave that one with you. The criticism here is, well, if it's a border crossing and it's irregular and it's causing all kinds of problems, why not just make it a regular border crossing? Instead of bringing the RCMP there, let's have CBSA, Customs and Border Security agents there. Because the reason why people are coming here is because CBSA has the right to tell them, no, you cannot enter here. So make it a regular border crossing and people will stop crossing here. Yeah, of course, you only need to have a couple of border agents because, there might be the average, the odd person to show up at the border crossing to actually cross for legal reasons. But it would definitely stop people from crossing illegally. Anyway, let's get back to this video.
Their heels. We're having to beg them every day for funding for the asylum seekers.
In this video, we're going to be looking at immigration from 3 different perspectives. We're going to be looking at it from a housing viewpoint, we're going to be looking at it from unemployment side of things, and we have to look at it from our integrity of our system.
I got some terrible...
Okay, before this goes on, I want to address this. this has been a popular issue in Canada within the population. This has not been a popular issue for politicians to dabble into until this video in particular. There's been a few times when Pierre Poilievre has just mentioned how insane the Canadian immigration system has become since Justin Trudeau has taken office. He has mentioned this. He has mentioned the Century Initiative, which is this utopian plan to bring 100 million people, or make the population of Canada 100 million people by some future date of, I believe, 2050, something like that, which is just, it's ludicrous. But they are in the process of bringing these people in, but none of the infrastructure is there for it. Now, I want to point out that we've been banging this drum for some time. And I mean, I'm not just patting myself on the back. I had Darshan Maharaja on for one of the groundbreaking videos that got shared everywhere, where Darshan brought up all of these issues that were just, I was unaware of, so many people were unaware of, that, you know, yes, immigration is happening, but the people that are coming are being scammed. The people that are coming are in dire circumstances once they get here, and they're being housed in you know, squabbles, and they're being exploited in what the UN is now calling a new form of slavery, which is unbelievable. It wasn't just me. Lauren Southern with Tenet Media put out this video recently, and this is about exactly the same thing, and it's talking about the fact that this is a way for big corporations to exploit the new underclass of people, these temporary foreign workers, so that they can tie them to a job and have indentured servants for an amount of time, with the promise, that dangling that carrot of possible permanent residence in Canada. And it's really disgusting, in my opinion. Now, of course, r/Canada Housing too has been, people on here have been talking about this for months and months and months, going on to years now, talking about all of these things. Of course, this video being shared here. Now, of course, I'm going to leave the entire video in the description down below. I recommend it. I believe it's about a 15-minute video where they go into all the different particular points. Now, Chrystia Freeland was asked about this recently, because now this is the third rail is being just grabbed a hold of. We can talk about immigration, and they can't just call you a racist for talking about it. So she was asked about it, and this is part of her response to that.
Something that I think we all recognize is when it comes to international students, we have seen some institutions not invite students here to really give them a good education, but really to abuse them. And that is not okay, and that is why our government has stepped in and introduced a cap on international students.
Now, the question here is, did they know about it? And they're at the helm. They're the ones running the show. How is it that they don't know about it, yet all of us independent, you know, people in independent media are figuring this stuff out? We're reporting on it, and they're just coming to realize this stuff. Now, this is a video I made about Miller, who's the immigration minister, and his absolute surprise at what was actually happening in the student visa program.
These institutions are smart, and they've gone and they've seen that they can get tuition fees that are 4 or 5 times more than what my kids pay at McGill or Acadia.
Trudeau's immigration minister, Mark Miller, makes an about face on his international student policy. This was him just a few months ago.
Look, international students are a credit to this country, Mr. Speaker. They are the future of this country, and they are an asset that is very lucrative, and they are an asset that is very lucrative.
And they are an asset that is very lucrative.
Independent journalists broke the story that this was actually a scam billion-dollar industry and a backdoor for immigration.
It is not the intention of this program to have sham commerce degrees or business degrees that are sitting on top of a massage parlor that someone doesn't even go to, and then they come into the province and drive an Uber.
But that's exactly how it went down. That is exactly how it went down, and it's
These
ridiculous.
Are smart,
that this
and
is...
they've gone and they've seen that they can get tuition.
It's ridiculous that this is what's been happening in this scenario under their watch. While many people are making a killing off of this whole thing. So that drives a lot of people to question, well, who in the government's making money on these things, and how much did you actually know? Now, you could say, well, they were completely oblivious and they were doing it for the right reasons. Well, are they doing it for the right reasons? Or is it a case that they're trying to band-aid something that's been long coming, and that's the Social Security problem? And there's not many people talking about this, but there is one guy here. This is from Blndr.report, and it's Johnathan Harvey, who's actually talking about this specific issue in Canada.
Canada has spiraled into utter madness. Almost 7% of people living in this country hold temporary work permits, student visas, or are seeking asylum. When you factor in illegal immigration, that number jumps to around 10%. In other words, a significant portion of people living in Canada aren't Canadians. Meanwhile, the rate of permanent residency is climbing each year, with 2024 on pace to add over 500,000 new citizens, with similar targets over the next 2 years. In fact, the only countries growing their populations faster per capita are in Africa, and even then, the percentages are pretty close. Anyone not blinded by woke ideology can see the devastating effects of this mass migration. Crime is surging, housing is increasingly unaffordable, healthcare is collapsing, wages are stagnant, and young Canadians struggle to find summer jobs, while taxpayers foot the bill for all of these problems. As Canadians line up at food banks in record numbers, asylum seekers are being housed in hotels at the taxpayer's expense, receiving individual benefits that outstrip what the average Canadian earns per year. Now, there are 4 underlying reasons for this unsustainable rate of immigration that few are willing to discuss, so here they are. First, government social programs like the Canada Pension Plan are essentially a pyramid scheme dependent on age demographics. With Canadian birth rates below replacement levels, the government is importing a new tax base from developing countries to keep these programs alive. 2, this so-called cultural enrichment actually leads to a fragmented society, making it easier for government to not only manipulate and control us, but also implement egregious policy. While citizens bicker over group grievances, they fail to recognize the state as the true source of their problems. Third, the government is colluding with transnational criminal organizations, including the Sinaloa cartel and Chinese narco groups, for political and financial gain. The evidence is abundant, and this corrupt alliance thrives in a diverse population, as any criticism can and has been dismissed as racist or xenophobic. And finally, the government can obscure the reality of Canada's declining productivity and stagnant wages by artificially inflating GDP through mass migration rather than genuine economic growth. But make no mistake, when total debt is considered without subtracting non-liquid assets like CPP, Canada's debt to GDP ratio plummets to 26th out of 32 countries. Now, I want to be clear about something here because people are often quick to conflate these things when they hear information that does not really comport with their narrative. This has nothing to do with any particular race, religion, culture, or ethnicity. This has to do with the well-being of Canada for Canadians, a country that is already the most diverse in the world. So it's time to shed the illusion that this government's actions are motivated by altruism. Canada's current immigration policies are unsustainable.
Absolutely unsustainable, and that's it. And not only are our immigration policies unsustainable, but the way we've been, the government has been handling the economy is unsustainable, and our pension plan is unsustainable. We really need to get a grip on this instead of band-aiding it by bringing a whole bunch of people to the country. Thinking that that's going to solve the problem. No, it's going to exacerbate the problem, as it's been pointed out here in this video. But I would like to, at this point, I would like to applaud the Conservative Party for actually coming out and touching this topic, because it's been far too long. It's been way too long for them to be sitting on the sidelines and not really jumping on this. Everybody in the country has been screaming from the hilltops, talk about this, talk about this, talk about this. We need a real opposition, and here we have it. So I want to leave this one with you. Do you think the Conservatives are doing enough? Is it too little too late? What is going on in your mind on this topic? Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Tonight we'll be having a panel at 6:30 Pacific time, so that's 9:30 Eastern. I'm going to be doing the live show, the usual Friday night live show. Going to have a panel, great people, Kirk Lubermoff. We have Darshan Maharaja and Marty up north, as well as myself. We're going to be talking about specifically this topic. So if you have any questions, come in at that time and share some ideas with all of us. We're going to be discussing this. So we'll see you in the next one, and we'll see you tonight. Keep on trucking.